Hello! In this lecture, we are going to learn how to build scatterplot charts with ggplot 2. The data frame I'm going to use is called HW, and it contains information about the height and the weight of 70 people, male and female. So the height is expressed in centimeters, the weight is expressed in kilograms, and we are going to create a scatter plot with the variables height and weight. First, let's load the package ggplot2 and then create the plot using the function geom_point. Here we must define our data set HW, and in the aesthetic function we have to specify the variables represented on the x and the y-axis. So on the x-axis we will have the height, and on the y-axis we'll have the weight. And because the variable height on the x scale is continuous, I used the function scaleXContinuous to define the limits for the variable height. These are 150 and 193, because these are the minimum and the maximum height in the data frame. Well, more or less. Let's run this all, and here's our scatter plot. As you can notice, the weight depends on the height. Generally, the higher people tend to have a greater weight, as you can see here on the chart. Okay, now let's build a clustered scatter plot by gender. So we are going to have two groups of dots for the male and female categories. First of all, we are going to store the variable gender in the data frame HW. So this variable, we are going to store it in a new variable called LGD, a new vector. Okay, and now we are going to build our scatter plot with points of different colors. How to do that? Here in the aesthetics function, we enter a new option, color, which is equal to LGD. So the program knows that it has to differentiate the color of the points by gender, by the variable LGD. The limits are the same, of course. Let's run this. So, as you can notice here, the blue dots correspond to the male group, the male subjects, and the red dots correspond to the female subjects. The program added a legend automatically because we used the option color in this function aesthetics. If you want to get points of different shapes instead of different colors, you will use here the option shape instead of color. So the option shape will be equal to LGD. Okay. So here, as you may notice in the legend, you have dots for the female group and triangles for the male group. It's harder to see a little bit, so different colors is better. And if you want to get points of both different shapes and colors, of course you can have it. So here in the aesthetics function, you enter both options, shape and color, and both are equal to LGD. So the shape and the color of the dots will be different depending on the gender, the categories of the grouping variable. Let's run this. Okay, so here for the female group we have blue dots, while for the male group we have blue triangles. Okay, now let's see how to add a trend line to our scatter plot. That's a pretty more complex task. First of all, let's create a linear model with weight as the dependent variable and height as the explainer, as the independent variable. We'll do that with the function lm, which stands for linear model. So here weight is the dependent variable, height is the independent variable. They are separated by a tilde, and our data frame is HW. And we are going to store this model in a variable called model. Okay. So let's run this. Let's clear the console a bit first. And then let's print our variable model. In essence, it contains the coefficients of the regression model with the weight and the height. So the intercept is minus 62.2, and the coefficient of the height variable, the independent variable, is 0.79. Now let's get the minimum and the maximum heights. So we store them in two variables, min h and max h. And then we are going to create a new vector containing these limits. We are going to call it height. So using the C function and the variables minimum and maximum height. Let's print it. So here we have a vector with the minimum height 150.7 and the maximum height 192.3. Okay, and now based on our linear model, called model, you remember, we are going to predict the weight based on the height. So in this function predict, we are going to specify, of course, our model, and then we are going to specify the dependent variable, the independent variable, the explainer, but as a data frame, because that's how the predict function works. It requires a data frame here. So I'm using the data frame function with the argument, the variable height, the independent variable. And I'm going to store the prediction in a new vector called fit. Okay, now let's print the vector fit. Here we have, of course, two values. These are the predicted weights for the two heights, minimum and maximum. So for the minimum height, we have a predicted weight of 57.5 kilograms, and for the maximum height we have a predicted weight of 90.6 kilograms. Now let's create a data frame with these two vectors, height and fit. So the maximum height and the minimum weight and their corresponding predictions, with the function data frame, and we are going to create this new data frame endpoints, because this will be the endpoints of our trend line. So let's create the data frame endpoints and let's view it now. So here in the column height we have the minimum and the maximum height, and here in the column fit we have the corresponding predicted weights. Okay, so we are going to use the data in this data frame, the information in this data frame, to draw our line, our trend line. So now we can build the scatter plot with the trend line. So here I am using, of course, the function geonPoint to draw the scatter plot, just like in the previous examples. And in order to draw the line, I will use the function geom_line. The data frame is, of course, endpoints. And in the aesthetics function, I specify the variables represented on the x and y axis. So on the axis x, you will have the height, this height from the endpoints data frame, and on the axis y, I will have the column fit, the variable fit, again in this data frame endpoints. Okay, and I will make this line red and with a size of 1. Let's run this. Fine, so here you have the scatter plot with the line, with the trend line draw in the middle of the points. This is useful when you want to know whether the relationship between the two variables is approximately linear. For example, if you want to compute the Pearson correlation between the variables. So that's it about the Scatterplot charts. Thank you.